The biggest issue was a deep challenge to your understanding of God is love, which is something that everyone has to face really in their Christian faith. That our hardest question is, where is God in suffering?
Welcome to What's the Story? My name is Matt Edmondson, and this is a podcast full of stories about faith and courage from everyday people. And today I'm chatting with Ed Walker about his Christian journey, challenges he's faced in life, and some of the lessons he's learned on the way. But before I get into that, let me give a shout out to a couple of episodes that you should also check out. Check out the podcast I did with Jenny Oliver called When Life Spirals Out of Control. Jenny was a great guest on the What's the Story podcast, as was Dave Conn. You can see and hear his episode. Actually, it's called God Get Me Out of This and I'll Do Anything, a prayer we have all prayed at various points in time. Now you can find these and our entire archive of episodes on our website for free at www.crowd.church, or you can go whatsthestorypodcast.com. They take you to the same place. And whilst you're there, sign up for our newsletter, and each week we will email you these links along with the notes and links from today's conversation with Ed. They get directly sent to your inbox, which is amazing. Now, this episode is brought to you by Crowd Online Church. You know, as well as I do, that not everybody wants to go to church and not everybody can get into a church building. And this is where online church works super well. It is a safe space to explore the Christian faith. And the thing that I love about Crowd Church is that you get to join in and shape the conversation, as they don't just talk at you. No, you can get to join in. So if you've never been to church before, or if you are looking for a new church, check out Crowd Church. The website is www.crowd.church. Now, before we get into the conversation, I do want to give a shout out to Simon Guillebeau, who introduced me to Ed. Simon, if you may or may not remember, if you're a regular to the podcast from Great Lakes Outreach, did an episode called How Gratitude Changes Everything. So Ed, not being funny, but these are big shoulders upon which you stand. So let's talk about Ed. Ed Walker is a seasoned humanitarian with over 10 years experience in relief and development. He's worked in war zones and disaster-stricken areas across Africa, reaching over 100,000 people affected by conflict, and he chairs the NGO Steering Committees. Ed also is an accomplished author, having written the incredible book Reflections from the Scorched Earth that has sold over 5,000 copies. Back in the UK, Ed has served as the director of YMCA Client Services before founding the charity Hope into Action. Their mission is to house vulnerable individuals with the help of local churches. Today, Hope into Action has over 80 homes in 20 towns across England and has won several awards, including the Best Christian Social Action Award in 2015 and The Guardian's Best Housing Project in the country, no doubt, in 2017. Ed's latest book, A House Built on Love, was published in October 2020, and in June 2022, he was awarded an MBE for his services to the homeless. Ed is a proud husband and father of 2 daughters and a son. Oh yes. Ed, that's a heck of an intro. Welcome to the show, man. Great to have you.
Thank you very much. It's a real honor to be here. I really appreciate it.
Oh no, it's great. And if you're watching on YouTube, Ed, one of the things I noticed straight away, and we may as well tell people straight away if they can see it, what is that behind you on the wall?
That's an Ethiopian throw that a friend gave us as we left Khartoum after 3.5 years of serving the Darfur program. Where I went out there married and came back with 1 baby and 1 in the oven. So it was great for 4 years of our life.
Fantastic. And have you got these sort of knickknacks? I don't know, there's probably a better phrase than knickknacks, but do you know what I mean? These trinkets all over the house from Africa?
This room is our kind of Africa honouring house, and there's one other corridor where I've got random sort of crosses and sticks that have been given to me by people, and trowels and things like that. That just look like, two main spaces.
Fantastic. So Ed, for those people that don't know, tell us about Hope into Action and what it does.
Yeah, well, hoping to actually, I mean, the way I sometimes explain it is, I'd spent that 10 years, as you said, overseas in disaster response. My favourite verse, my most powerful verse that spoke to me time and again was Isaiah 58. Isn't this the kind of fasting I've chosen? To loose the chains of injustice, to set the oppressed free. And then I landed, we left that world. I landed in a place called Peterborough in East England. And I found myself completely feeling like a fish out of water. How
Yeah.
do those verses apply to Christians in Peterborough? And I kept saying to God, look, I know you need Christians in this city, but exactly to do what? I don't understand. And then one day, just actually Rachel just given birth, so I was on paternity leave playing with my first daughter in the park and met a guy on the bench, as you do. His story was a really familiar story. It happens hundreds of times every month in this country, actually. But I'd read about it but never met it. And I asked him his story. He said, well, I was in prison this morning. I left at the point I was leaving. I was full of determination and hope and wanting a fresh start. But as I was going out of the gate, a prison officer said to me, we'll see you back here in 3 months' time.
No.
At that point, any sense of self-esteem crumbled. And by the time I met him, 11 a.m., he spent his discharge money, 47 quid on a bottle of something very strong, and was halfway through it. And I said to him, well, don't worry, I can help. I know the hostels in this town. None were taken, too old, or don't take ex-offenders. So I said, what about Norwich? Same deal. What about Cambridge? Same deal. I said, where were you before you went into prison? He said, I was in Cambridge. So I said, well, why don't you go back to Cambridge? He said, if I do, I'll be surrounded by the same old people doing the same old things, and I will end up back inside. So he'd actually made a rational choice. He'd spent his money on his only friend. And as I left him there, and this is now answering your question, really, I found myself feeling two things. One, very disempowered. Two, a real passion or an anger, I suppose, that there are 20, 30 churches in this city, and not one of them was giving the homeless a home. And it was obvious that if you give that guy a home, his chance of reoffending would drop. I'd read the statistics. I'd now read it in a story. And from that moment on, really, I came back, and Rachel was concerned with our second newborn, but I was talking to her about this. And we began talking and thinking and praying. And eventually we said, well, look, the church can't run a hostel for 20 people, but they can run a home for 1 or 2 people. We bought a first home. We partnered it with our church, Breton Baptist Church. They agreed to try and love and support the tenants. I went into the prison, met someone who had nowhere to go on release, met him at the gate, took him to the house, and Hope into Action was begun. And that's where it started, really, and it's grown from there. A really broad range of homelessness. Actually, it's more than you said. It's now over 100 churches running more than 100 houses. So, it's really good.
Wow. So meeting this guy in the park then sort of changed your trajectory a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, at the time, I was praying, well, look, I have a nice career at the YMCA, or may I get a promotion there and a bit more money? And, of course, had to sort of jump off that thing. I had a fair bit of responsibilities, 100-odd staff, 200-odd tenants, clients underneath me, but really wanted to form a kind of outreach that would release the oppressed in a really intelligent way, but also never lose a spiritual edge. So we can always mirror Jesus's, his own job description from Luke 4. The Spirit of the Anointed Lord is upon me to release the oppressed, to set captives free, and proclaim the good news. And so many organizations in this country have started off doing both and slowly lost the proclamation side. Well, we want to always keep that. And if you always open a house in partnership with a church, then you'll always have spiritual input. And then you'll have the churches. We're actually discipling churches because churches are engaging in the lives of the most vulnerable in their community. They know about it. They know they should be doing that. And we're giving them a really good way in, a way that they grow because they meet Christ in the vulnerable, which shouldn't surprise us because Jesus said he was going to meet us there. So he identified with those who have nowhere to rest their heads, and he wants us to meet him there. Our churches become richer when they meet with the poor, and that's part of our mission, as well as helping those who are homeless on their journey out of homelessness.
So have you found then that this partnership with churches works super well? Is it I'm sort of answering the own question in my head as I ask it. I'm assuming it's a little bit more complicated than that, but on the whole, does it work well?
Yeah, I think what I would say is in the landscape, if you're someone who is experiencing homelessness, what in your landscape, what provision have you got? You might have someone might give you some food, someone else might give you a sleeping bag, someone may give you a tent, even someone may give you a night shelter, someone may give you a hostel. What the church can do, what now 100 churches can do, is give you a home. And that's really significant, because actually we give someone real dignity when we give them a home. What is a home? It's the same home you want for your children as I want for my children. A solid building that's similar to my neighbours, so I've got dignity when I walk out of it. I'm not sort of stigmatised because I live on the third floor of a hostel. I've got a bedroom, I've got a bathroom, I've got a kitchen, I've got a lounge, I've got a garden. And we're saying, we really trust you. We think you're good enough for this house. Jesus and worth. Here we're going to show it to you by offering you a key and trusting you, not with sort of 24-hour staff or anything like that. So that's one part of the model. And the other part, what else is a home? It's relationships, it's nurture, it's love, it's boundaries. And lots of organizations sort of will do the floating support or offer you a bed or something like that. What we do is give you a home, and part of that home is local connections, people, positive role models that are there to support you and journey with you. Because if when you come out of prison, the people that meet you are going to be people pushing drugs towards you. And if we can replace those relationships with positive ones from the local church, then you stand a much better chance of recovering from homelessness. It's a long journey out of homelessness for the vast majority of people. And relationships are key to that. It's a relational, if you think back to that guy on the bench, he had nowhere to go because he had no one to go to. So at the heart of his physical poverty, his homelessness, was a relational poverty, and the church is rich in relationships. So it's a very effective model when it works well. Of course, all churches are different and not everyone's perfect and we're not perfect and all that stuff. But essentially, at the core of a model, when it works really well, it's a great project.
Oh, fantastic. And so going back to the statement then you made earlier about, you were asking God about the Isaiah 58, is this not the fast that I've chosen? Do you now see the outworking of that in Hope into Action? Is that being actioned in Peterborough as it was back in Africa?
Yeah, I really feel it, because it's not this kind of fast and chosen ... to provide the poor wanderer with shelter. And I met the poor wanderer, and it's to release every yoke. That's what Isaiah 58 says. So if you're homeless, someone may come to you and say, well, you need some food, I can give you some food. Someone may come to you and say, you need some drug help, I'll give you that. You need some debt help, or you need some probation help, I'll give you those. What we say is actually come into our home and we can release every yoke that oppresses you, as according to Isaiah 58. And also, so an evangelist may come along to you in the street and say, you need Jesus. Well, we can do that as well. But it's holistic. It's all those things collectively oppress you. You may be able to deal with your bad debt if you didn't have an addiction. You may be able to deal with your addiction if you didn't have joblessness. You may be, do you see what I mean? Actually, all these things oppress you. And Isaiah 58 says every yoke. So that's what oppresses the poor wanderer. And if we can break all of those things, which takes time and is slow, then we can enable people to flourish into what God wants them to be.
Wow, fantastic.
So yeah, I've really connect now with Isaiah 58.
No, I think that's fascinating. So have you always had this sort of heart for the poor and the outcast then? Or is this something that evolved in you in your Christian journey?
No, I'd say I've always had it. I think, I was born into a Christian family. It's always a part of the faith that resonated with me most. I can remember at age 13, I said, don't give me any presents for my party, give some money to Tear Fund. I then ended up working for Tear Fund. And I think Tear Fund really shaped that in me, and it gave it a voice, and it gave it sort of depth and a sort of biblical depth. I got to understand the prophets a lot more. But I think it was always in me. And I would see justice, poverty, spiritual oppression, all wrapped, it were intrinsically interlinked, really. And so the gospel for me is more than just saying a prayer. It's releasing those systems which oppress people, as well as spiritual growth. And yeah, if you can alleviate the poverty, the spiritual poverty, the physical poverty, the systemic poverty, then that would be a fuller understanding of the gospel, which I wouldn't have been able to articulate 25 years ago, but it was sort of already in me, I suppose.
Yeah, no, fair enough. So you spent 10 years working in war zones and disaster areas in Africa. I guess one of my questions is that where you met Simon, who we gave a shout out to at the start of the show? And what were some of the most sort of challenging experiences you faced during that time?
My first assignment when I was 22 was I was sent out to this country called Burundi. At that point, there was about one other expat. No, there are a few more than that, but Simon was there. He'd been there a few months. He just had a push bike at that stage and very knobbly knees. And we just got along very, very well. And he was a very inspiring character, 3 or 4 years older than me, and a great role model for me to look up to and see someone really living out their faith. And in that world, I met other men and women who lived out a faith that I really could look up to and admire and hadn't yet really seen perhaps in my Christian journey. So that was really helpful for me. And across the 10 years, I worked in 5 or 6 different war zones, experienced most manifestations of war that are out there, not chemical or biological warfare, but certainly either directly or through the staff I work with. The biggest issue, and I can tell lots of stories of individual instances or suffering or death, was a deep challenge to your understanding of God is love, and which is something that everyone has to face really in their Christian faith. That our hardest question is, where is God in suffering? Your job is to relieve suffering, and you're doing it in a very violent context. What I found is 2 things. The glib answers I'd learned as a Christian growing up in a kind of evangelical church really didn't sort of cut much mustard with me. What I found really gave me the resilience I needed was the Bible, and a few books by Philip Yancey really. And what I found in the Bible, in my Christian upbringing, the word violence had never really been talked about, but I found violence writ large in every page of the Bible, from Cain and Abel to the Psalms to prophets to Jesus being killed to the persecuted church in Acts. It was there when I'd never seen it before, and the question is written in every verse of the Psalms, virtually, isn't it? Certainly, virtually every Psalm, and so that strengthened my faith where I needed to, and I found the Word was really sure where perhaps my upbringing hadn't been. That's probably but I could give you lots of examples of how that outworked itself in individual instances.
So I'm interested, Ed, when you talked about the standard glib answers from your evangelical upbringing didn't really work. What in your mind are those standard glib answers that I guess a lot of people still in the, if you've not been into war-torn Africa, it may be hard to sort of empathise with. So I'm kind of curious, what were some of the glib answers that you were given that weren't really working for you, and why?
Yeah, well, if we can contextualise it, if most of our listeners are in the UK, if someone had said to me, "Oh, I'm really struggling because my mum's dying of cancer, why is God doing this?" what I probably wouldn't talk about is free will. And I probably would talk about what I found in the Bible. Well, firstly, I want to listen. I want to empathize. I want to be alongside them. And I don't think what I found in the Bible is God gives very few answers to that. So he never answered Job. When Jesus was asked, why did these people die when the tower fell, he didn't answer that either. When Gideon asked God, why have you made me suffer like that? He didn't answer that. God either pointed to his might or he reassured them that he was with them. Jesus, before the crucifixion, when he was dropping sweats of blood, again, God didn't explain to him why. He just strengthened him with an angel. And I think that would be much more. Well, first of all, I wouldn't necessarily. I want to listen and empathize and show my support through my friendship. And if the questions were asked, I'd be honest about my doubts, because again, I find loads of doubts in the Bible. And I would encourage someone to take their doubts and their anger and their pain to God, rather than trying to give them some answer that is cogent and concise and, but perhaps lacking a bit in empathy.
It's a fair point, isn't it? Because one of the things that I guess I've noticed about certainly Christians who are deconstructing their faith, which is a very trendy term right now. I'm going through a period of deconstruction. Oftentimes, not all the time, but oftentimes, the reason for the deconstruction, I think, is probably an unhelpful theology around the concept of suffering. So most people would mentally sort of, attuned to the fact that there is suffering in the world. But as long as that suffering's out there and it's not affecting me, because as soon as it affects me and I question it, I don't understand it, therefore I don't know how to process this. So the only thing that I now know how to do is to deconstruct my faith. I see that, I don't know if you see that, Ed, but this is one of the things I see a lot. And it's interesting listening to you talk about this, because you wrote the book, sort of Reflections from the Scorched Earth, which were obviously based on your experiences working in war zones and dealing with this sort of violence and suffering. So how did writing this book help you process and make sense of these experiences, these sufferings? And I guess, in other words, why did you not deconstruct your faith when it was all kicking off around you? How did it strengthen your faith?
Yeah, I think what I've described is a process of deconstruction and restructure, I suppose, which is sort of all intermingled with each other. So I think perhaps the two things. Why did you write the book? One, I think writing for some, and I would agree with this. It's a way of getting what is inside out, and it's a way of finding what's going on inside you. I had loads of time because I was stuck in a hut or a tent. So in the evenings, I would just kind of A, read, B, read my Bible, or C, write. And the three were sort of intermingled. And when your only form of communication is a floppy disk and an HF radio, how else are you going to communicate? So I think all those things sort of played into one another. And I think, terrible suffering tends to force writing. A lot of the best poetry comes from World War One.
Yeah.
And similar sort of emotional reaction for some, and I was the same. I had an instinct to write, to try and work it out, to explore my faith, and to share what I was discovering. Habakkuk says, even though there's no fruit on the trees, yet I will praise the Lord. That is a much more helpful thing for me than some argument about free will. And so when you go into that verse and you meditate on it, somehow you do find God strengthens you. And there, God is my refuge and my strength. That is written virtually every psalm, and isn't it? It comes up and again. And if that's your source of strength, if you find God strengthening in His Word, then I find that's what keeps you going. And it's a real honest faith. It's a real honest relationship with God. It's not, and so I don't know if that's answered your question, but that was very much how it all came about, I suppose. And I tell stories in there, when you nurse a child to death, or when you watch them and then mother dies a bit later, and all that sort of stuff. How taking the communion and just had a call that someone's been shot in the backside, and how do you reconcile those two things? It's just hard to do. So that's really how I sort of brought it out and brought it alive through the book.
That's fascinating. So I guess then the question, if I can jump to the end of the book, how did you reconcile this idea of God is good faced with the nursing the infant child, the mother dying, someone getting shot in the backside?
Well, yeah, in some ways it's about accepting that some of these things are irreconcilable on this earth, and get it. Faith is that, isn't it? It's not having all the answers, but it's somehow sure of what you can't see, or have enough of a clinging on to what you can't see in the uncertainty, in the doubts, and in the challenge and the pain of it all. And I take Jesus in Gethsemane. He was just holding on to blind faith, wasn't he? He didn't. And God strengthened him somehow, mysteriously, through that angel. And if you asked him at that point, what's your theology of suffering? I don't know what he would have said. But it was a prayer of submission. Yeah. And faith is a submission, isn't it? I trust that you're God, therefore I submit. I don't have the answers. I'd much rather not walk through this path right now. So I don't know if that's answered your question, but in a sense, I didn't really come to a cogent answer, and that's the point. It came a whole load of explorations and verses where I found God. People did ask God, and God didn't really answer, and verses from the Bible, some of which I've quoted, that for me personally helped me in a genuine way.
No, fair enough. And so you obviously saw immense suffering. and I guess still do in a lot of ways with Hope into Action. You know, what are some of the stories of transformation though, or was it all suffering, or was there something that came out of it?
Oh, well, human spirit is indomitable, isn't it? You know, I mean, so the people both overseas and here, their inspiration comes as much from, you know, that guard that's working on nothing, and you wake up at 6 a.m. there he is hovering over a light reading his Bible, or the colleagues who you make friends with cross-culturally and their faith is so true in a way mine never will be. And same with our tenants now, that our men and women who've experienced homelessness now, you know, their stories carry such power, and there's such vulnerability, and there's such honesty in them as well. You know, I can always remember meeting a lady who worked as a prostitute. She was in a prison cell, and you know, there is so much tragedy in her life. Just when you come out of that thing. And I didn't have to, you know, that gave me the energy to work for 3 months afterwards. You know, I just worked so hard. And if you like, what's happened there is Jesus said, you know, when you visited me in prison, there am I. It was Jesus' spirit spoke to me through that lady, and gives you the strength and the power to punch it out, and motivation to go hard at whatever the task is ahead of you and whatever the challenge is ahead of you. So yeah, that's always the most encouraging thing. The indomitable spirit of people in suffering is really inspiring, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And I mean, there are a couple of people that that I've mentioned in the past who, for me, are the most inspiring people that I know. And it's not because of necessarily what they've achieved, it's because of what they've gone through, and they still remain just the sweetest, loveliest Christian people you could ever hope to meet, you know, just full of grace. And you just go, well, that's properly inspiring, because I've not lived through what they've lived through. And you kind of go, geez, I find myself, Ed, quite often comparing my life with somebody else's life. It's just one of those things that just happens in my head. And it's not so much I compare my life with people who I perceive more successful than me. I often compare my life with people who I think haven't got a whole great deal. And in my head, I'm like, so therefore, Mr. Matthew, you need to, you know, perhaps change how you think or change how you pray in this situation, because actually when you look at that, really, what have I got to complain about? Now, obviously there are some genuine complaints, but I find myself doing that a lot. And I'm curious, how did you respond to that when you're out there, or when you're with Hope into Action and you are working with people who clearly don't have, you know, a room in their house with an Ethiopian sort of flag or bedspread on the wall?
Yeah.
Do you often compare yourself and theirs, or is that something you deliberately don't do, I guess is?
No, absolutely. I compare both up and down and feel inadequate both ways, you know, like I think, but I absolutely get your point. I think so often I would look at, if you go back to overseas in Africa, or I can remember just seeing the people I'm working with, and we all know intellectually that, you know, we're all created equal. When you feel it in the core of your being, across a cultural divide, even across linguistic divides, and you see, yeah, if you could be my mother, my brother, my sister. It's such a powerful emotion. I mean, if I'd mentioned Hewitt, who was an Eritrean refugee with no recourse to any support in Khartoum, she was our cleaner and maid and looked after our daughter. And we would go around to her hut, which was no bigger than this room here. You can't see it. Just one room, which was a corridor and a kitchen and dining room. The other room was for them and their children. And she was one of the most mature, intelligent people you would ever meet. And you're like, she just oozed this wisdom and intelligence and maturity. And Rachel and I were delighted to leave our daughter with her as a carer. And you just know that there is so, you just know that if they were given my upbringing, she'd be doing so much more than I would. And that, in a funny way, is your drive. That is where your drive comes from. That's compassion, that's empathy, and that is your connectedness that drives you forward. None of us are ever going to solve the world's problems. Barack Obama couldn't manage it with all his power, and neither will I or you. But we can, without being cheesy, we can do our bit. And it's a great privilege, I think, when you can meet people across a cultural divide and connect as your fellow human being. And that's the same in this country as well. And you realize, by God, if you had my birthrights, you would be doing something so much more than I am now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting, isn't it? And I, because I've heard people in the past say things like that. Well, if you think about, there's people in the world that have it worse off than you. And that's almost not given people a license to sort of go through necessarily the emotions that they're going through at the time, and so people have sort of shied away from using that as a statement these days. But actually, I think there's a balance to it, isn't there? And I'm not telling people not to sort of think about the emotions that they're going through, but there is actually, if this statement which says, actually, if I compare myself to probably about 98% of the world's populations, life's okay, and it's not a bad thing to sort of put it into some kind of context. So, Ed, over the years that you've been doing this, I'm kind of curious, right? You've been given an MBE, which is awesome. My initials, by the way, MBE. And let's not go there. So people have recognised, the work that you've done, and no doubt there's a team behind the success and all that sort of, all that sort of stuff. But if you could go back 15, 20 years, to that young man just about to set off to Africa before he meets Simon, what advice would you have given yourself?
Yeah, I mean, well, when I first went out, I thought I was going out for 3 months, maybe 6 months, and then that would be it. So I was glad that no one ever said to me, you might stay out longer. I just think I'd say lean in, just lean into it, embrace it and go for it. I think it's a truism. I think there's a lot to be said. You don't hear this word so much in Christian circles, but I think sacrifice is important. And, when you give, then you receive. Trust in that, because at times we can all say, well, I've chosen a different path, I have more money and better this and better that. But I do believe that an element of sacrifice, an element of denying yourself is an important ingredient in our walk as Christians, and not one I hear spoken about so much these days. But that's when you receive. That's the blessing comes from that, So I think there's still a really important case for that argument.
So it's interesting, the word sacrifice, because you're right. I don't think we talk about it a lot. The sacrifice of praise, the sacrifice of giving, the sacrifice of denying yourself, taking up your cross and all that sort of thing. Why do you think we don't talk about it so much in church these days?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it is. We're trying to sell faith. This will help you through your mental problems. Faith, whereas I think people actually respond to authentic faith. I think sacrifices. I don't know why fully, but when you commoditize church, when church is something you consume on a Sunday, and you're trying to make the message something that people will like and consume, ironically, I think it probably doesn't work. I think people are inspired but by authentic faith, and I think in the right context, in the right way, not every week. So it's a sort of oppression. You must sacrifice more. That's unhealthy, isn't it? But a willingness, for in the light of God's mercies, Romans 12, when you just consider your thumb, in the light of God's mercies, give up your whole body as living sacrifice. Do you see what I mean? So it starts from a point, as you say, from a point of gratitude, of deep spiritual understanding, all God's done for us. Then what is it if I give up myself as a living sacrifice? I think that's healthy, and I think that's a healthy spirit. Not in a broader context of spiritual disciplines and truths.
Yeah, no, very, very true. And I'm just sat here thinking, actually, it felt for a while that the church became the equivalent of a self-help sort of message. Do you know what I mean? You couldn't distinguish a church sermon from a sort of self-help sermon, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And actually, the stuff that you've just been talking about the sacrifice, about whilst you don't talk about it every Sunday, it should be one of those things which distinguishes the Christian faith, because, you know, Tony Robbins doesn't necessarily talk about that on stage. At least I don't think I've never been, to be fair. But do you know what I mean? It's that kind of thing, isn't it? So yeah, very good, super powerful. So I guess if you look back over the time, are there any regrets in anything, or anything that you'd like to change perhaps over what's been done?
Well, I think, regret, contrition, confession. I don't quite know what the line is there.
That's your next book, maybe.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that has to be part of our spiritual journeys every week, every month, every day, doesn't it? So, yeah, my major life decisions, I don't regret. In terms of, that first decision to serve with Cheer Fund, then come back when we did, and then start having to action. But within that, there's no end of doubts, plenty of time about it. And within that, there's no end of mistakes you've made. And the hardest things is where, perhaps also in a leadership position where you've hurt people. And then when I think it's really hard when you're in leadership, isn't it? Because Jesus rebuked people, and that presumably hurt them. And sometimes as a sinner, I've perhaps caused hurt in an unhelpful way. And I think with the responsibility of leadership does come that sometimes. And sometimes you've had to grasp a situation and done it badly. Sometimes you've felt you've had to grasp a situation and you got that wrong. Sometimes even you've got it right, but you've hurt people, and that's horrible. I think those are perhaps some of the more, I don't know if regret's the right word, but some of the harder elements of the role. For sure, you've made decisions. I mean, every security instance, when you're responsible for staff, every security instance where something bad happened, you could have stopped it because there were always indicators, but you wouldn't be in that context if you halted operations every time. So you've had to really self-recrimination in those situations, and in situations that over into action where times of things have gone wrong. You have to work through self-recrimination and go, I may have done, I could have done better, but I'm still held by God. And that doesn't make me it doesn't mean I shouldn't continue. It doesn't mean I got it wrong. And so on. So you've got to face into those mistakes and the cost of those mistakes, I think. What's the answer? Don't feel I've really answered your question, but in short, lots of regrets.
Fair enough. That's a very good answer. So what does the future hold? What's the next sort of 3-5 years look like, do you think? Where's God taking all of this?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think there are lots of examples of founders that stay on too long. And I think every founder and every organization they found is unique. So I'm not casting judgment on any individual person here, but I think certainly over lockdown, there are lots of examples from Bill Hybels to I won't name all, Larsh, Hillsong perhaps even, where the founder hasn't ended as well as they might. And for me, in reflecting on that, I felt, well, if you genuinely trust God, then he's got the organization, and doesn't. I can be conned into my own sense of indispensability. Well, no, do you trust God actually with this organization that he's founded and you've just been a partner with him on for a period of time, and really wanting to model something different? So 18 months ago, I did resign to my trustees after a year of thinking about it and discussing it with a few of them. And we've appointed John Kurt to take over from me now. He's doing a fantastic job. I'm so proud of him and the handover we've done, if I'm honest with you. And I'm now an ambassador 1 to 2 days a week for that. And we're just in that sort of transition phase at the moment. Therefore, I've sort of run off at the end of a cliff and don't have any secure income or work. But you're very, very much trusting that will come through. So I think I think there are some good examples of founders leaving really well. I think Les Isaacs is one from
Mm.
Essential Trust, and I guess John and I want to be another example of that, where I hand over really well. We have a really solid relationship with me in this role. I currently have no managerial or governance responsibility. That's important that John is captain of the ship, and I'm no blessing to him and not a burden for him. I don't undermine him. I support him, and hopefully can add value to this movement that is Hope into Action of getting churches to house the homeless, seeing that as part of their worship. Hopefully I can be released from the day-to-day worries and go hard at promoting the organisation.
Fantastic. And so, Ed, in closing, a question I like to ask everybody if I can. If you had just one message, right, you got one chance. Every time I say this, I get this song, that you only get one shot. Do not miss the chance song in my head for some very odd reason. But you this is your last sermon, in effect, your one message for whatever reason. What would be the topic? What's the overarching thing that you've learned from God over the years that you would talk about?
Well, there's a Cy Gilbert quote that says, I'll say two things. Well, if God is worth anything, he's worth everything. And that's such sound logic. If he is out there and he did create every mountain, then he's probably worth everything. So I do like that. And the other thing, I would just really love to see a deep understanding of the gospel where climate, poverty, justice, peace, proclamation, salvation, redemption are all so interwoven in our understanding that the house that's falling down in Norfolk now is, the child that is starving because of my carbon footprint needs to know about Jesus spiritually, needs to have food, needs the soil around his village to be redeemed. That's all the gospel. And that to be just so well ingrained in our understanding. Jesus said, preach good news to all creation, not just the human race. And sort of that I'm drawn to that's an attractive gospel to me. I'm drawn to come to faith. I set up Hope into Action so people would come to faith. And I'm trying to proclaim, but it's in a context of something wider.
No, that's great. Do you think that, because as I'm listening to you talk, it sort of resonates with me that is Tearfund. Do you know what I mean? This is sort of almost like the mission of Tearfund that you're talking about. Is that, have I understood that right? And is that something maybe that Tearfund helped forming you, or is that something that you had before you hit Tearfund?
Yeah, I think it was kind of in me instinctively, but Tearfund formed it and shaped it and gave words to it and articulated it and developed it in me. And yeah, I think I was drawn to Tearfund because it was in me. And I would say that is very much, that it would be very similar to what Tearfund would articulate. And I'm still 15 years after leaving Tearfund. That's my answer to that question. It still makes sense. It's an interconnected world in my mind. And the gospel is interwoven into all of that.
Yeah, fantastic. Listen, Ed, it's been an absolute treat talking to you. I'm aware of time. I'm aware the kids are coming back from school. If people want to find out more about you, about Hope Interaction, what's the best way to go about doing that?
Yeah, listen, we'd love to connect with you. hopeintoaction.org.uk, or if you want to send me an email, ed.walker@hopeintoaction.org.uk. Any conversation I'd love to pick up with you, especially if you've seen the homeless. It's going up again. We predicted it would go up 18 months ago. Homelessness has gone up by a third in this country in the last year. The church needs to stand to rise up. So if that floats your boat in particular, do get in touch. ed.walker@hopeintoaction.org.uk.
And what can people do, Ed, if maybe they have a heart, but it's not necessarily something on their church's agenda? Is it still something that they can connect with you about? What sort of things could they do?
there's so many ways you can connect with us. If it just we'll come back to your question, but if your church wants to engage, how can it engage? Everyone in your church has got something. They may not have money, but they can help decorate a house. They may have a journey with someone. Someone may not have time, but they could invest their wealth to buy a house for the homeless, and then you own the house, but you lease it to us. So you're sharing your wealth with the poor. You can give to us. You can pray for us. You can connect with us. You can inspire people. You can work for us. You can be a trustee for us. There's so many ways. And if anyone gets in touch, I generally say, great, let's have a coffee. And over a coffee, let's find out what we're trying to do is God will reveal where your passions and talents overlap with what we're doing. And I'm sure something can come from it. I love having coffees with people. I'd love to connect with you.
Just love having coffee.
I do.
Yeah, fair enough. Listen, Ed, thank you so much for coming on the What's the Story podcast, man. It's been an absolute treat to hear your story. Love what you're doing. Super, super awesome. So my final question. I'm a bit like the Apostle Paul. I say finally, then ask another question. I want you to imagine you're at the Christian Oscars, for want of a better expression. I can't think of a better example. And you've just got your sort of Lifetime Achievement Award. And you have a minute to thank all of those folks that have had a big impact on your life, like family, mentors, authors, software, podcasters, whoever, I'm curious, who do you thank and why?
Well, yeah, obviously, my wife, my mother have had very powerful spiritual impacts on me. I think my dad and my elder brother are probably the most powerful. Then after that, we Nelson Mandela and Martin Luther King Jr. They'd be the ones I go for. Fantastic.
And the second person today that's mentioned Martin Luther King and Nelson Mandela, actually. Really interesting.
When I read Martin Luther King's book, age 26, I thought, what Bible has he read? Because I would never have been taught that. How did he get that he's not in the Bible? And that's what so inspired me about him. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, the people can look like this. Oh, right. Why am I 26 and no one's told me that yet?
Yeah.
That's what blew my mind about him.
Really interesting, isn't it? When if what I read is correct, that actually his very famous one, I have a dream speech. Most of that was it was like a spontaneous thing, wasn't it? It was sort of, it wasn't planned. It was just like, that's the way I guess the Holy Spirit took him at that point in time. Of course, we can have questions about the rest of his life, but at that point in time, you listen to that speech and you just think, oh my goodness. I do that thing again where I compare myself and I go, I think I'm okay at preaching, but then I listen to that and go, I've not learned a single thing. It was just incredible, absolutely incredible. Fantastic. We will, of course, link to Ed's info in the show notes, which you can get along for free, along with a transcript. You can get them on the podcast app you're listening to this podcast on YouTube if you're watching it in the description. Or, of course, you can get it on our website as well, which is whatsastorypodcast.com. And, of course, if you're signed up to the newsletter, they will be winging their way to your inbox. Ed, fantastic. Thanks, man. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate you coming on the show.
Yeah, real pleasure. Thank you for having me. It's been a real honor, real privilege.
It's been brilliant, honestly. Now, remember to check out Crowd Online Church at www.crowd.church. Even if you might not see the point of church, we are a digital church on a quest to discover how Jesus helps us live a more meaningful life. We are a community, a space to explore the Christian faith, and a place where you can contribute and grow, and you are welcome at Crowd Church. Now be sure to subscribe to What's the Story wherever you get your podcasts from, because we've got yet more great conversations lined up, and I don't want you to miss any of them. And in case no one has told you yet today, you are awesome. Yes, you are. Created awesome. It's just the way God made you. It's a burden you have to bear. Ed has to bear it. I have to bear it. You've got to bear it as well. Now, What's the Story is produced by Crowd Online Church. You can find our entire archive of episodes on your favorite podcast app. The team that makes this show possible is Sadaf Bainon, Estella Robin, and Tanya Hutzelak. Our theme song was written by Josh Edmondson. And if you would like to read the transcript or show notes, as I said, you can find them on the website crowd.church, where you can also, as it happens, sign up for the newsletter. Now, that's it from me. Thank you so much for joining me. Have a fantastic week wherever you are. It's bye from me. It's bye from Ed. Bye for now.